All right, hello LinkedIn and YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us live today. I have a special surprise. We're actually going to talk about something really relevant in the moment because we're going to talk about supply and demand forecasting in uncertain times. Now, if there ever were uncertain times, I think 2020 would be considered a shoo-in for this. We're going to have two guests join us shortly. We're going to have John Fitzgerald from Pomeroy Partners and Scott Pavel from Smart Chicken. And I'm actually going to bring John in to say hello. Hey, John.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, right? Depends wherever people are joining us from. Thank you for joining the session. I think it's always good to get started and ask everybody else who, where they're dialing in from. And I'll start with you, John. Where are you joining us from?
Cool. I'm in downtown Chicago.
Downtown Chicago. Awesome. How's the situation over there? And by situation, I mean, weather, COVID, protests, all
well,
of
it. Besides the obvious, the issues with the hair and not being able to get that cut, which we're going to rectify in a couple of weeks. And e-learning is finally wrapped up for my first grader. So now it's endless amounts of Netflix and YouTube and Google Play videos and trying to find camps that are open. So a lot of working from home, the periodic, 7-year-old head appearing in the background. But things are starting to get back a little bit to normal. At least in Chicago, we're going to really start to see a lot more opening up of restaurants and bars and stuff like that. Actually on Friday is when they're going to go to indoor seating and 25% capacity. So.
Oh wow, very cool. See, I can totally relate to the kid situation. I have two kids that are in preschool and one in kindergarten that we just graduated. So I'm so happy. I've never been this excited to have them home from school. But yeah, things are somewhat improving. I think we have the playgrounds open as well.
Yeah.
See, we've got a lot of people. We have people from India. Oh, Fred's here from Kansas. Mohammed, Qatar. We've got Patricio from Argentina. Dublin, Ireland, very diverse crowd. Thank you guys so much for joining. So, John, I think it's good to get started with, tell people a little bit about yourself and the work that you do at Pomeroy Partners.
Sure. I'll give the short version of myself. I went to school for mechanical engineering, did a whole bunch of different things, but about 15 years ago, I really started focusing on just data and analytics. Sorry, phone ringing, of course. So about 15 years ago, started focusing just on data and analytics. So with Pomeroy Partners, what we do is we simplify data to help your business grow. So I've done everything from traditional data warehousing to machine learning to your typical BI platforms. Done lots of different things. I've probably worked with, at this point, 400 or more different BI projects.
Oh wow, that's a vast experience. 400 BI projects across how many companies would that be?
Oh, hundreds. I've probably worked with 200 different companies. Some smaller, some really big. I've worked with everything from 10 employee companies to Fortune 10 companies. I've done projects that were a couple of weeks long to projects that were literally years long, constant iteration of business intelligence landscape and all of the data behind the scenes.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So for those who've joined us live, just a quick reminder, feel free to put your comments and questions in the LinkedIn comments, and we're actually going to put them into the view. And John has offered to answer every single question that comes in, no matter how technical or how difficult. He's got this great experience, so he's here for you.
I was told there'd be no test.
It's a pass or fail, so don't worry.
All right, good.
Most of the guests pass, so I think you should be fine. Yeah, let's go back to Pomeroy Partners for a second. So what type of clients do you serve, and which regions do you serve clients in?
Yeah, so Pomeroy actually started in the UK, and the founding partners were all South Africans. So we now have offices in London, down in South Africa, and also In the U.S., we've got Chicago, Denver, Kansas City, and then Madison, Wisconsin. So we're fairly Midwestern focused in terms of our resources and our people. But we've got clients all over the U.S. and really all over the world at this point. The kinds of clients, I mean, it's a huge range. So we're going to be talking to Scott in a few minutes from Smart Chicken. So chicken company, a chicken manufacturer, a candy company, medical device manufacturers, healthcare organizations and hospitals, a metal distributor. We're just kind of all, we're doing so many different things, but there's always kind of some common threads of things that we're doing, you know, obviously simplifying data. But we're doing, you know, BI dashboards and data integration work from various ERP systems. We've done a lot of work with SAP over the years and extracting data and value from that data. We do a lot in sales and marketing. We do a lot in supply chain and logistics, and then we're doing a lot more on the clinical side and healthcare as well. So pretty broad range.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, given your vast experience in working with, you know, hundreds of clients, it would be interesting to see what are your thoughts on the current trends in the data and analytics space. Like, what are you seeing, and what do you think we're going to see in the next 5 years or so?
Yep. There's been a few things that have been happening. You know, first of all, the thirst for data has increased, right? There's tons and tons of uncertainty. And we've got a lot of our clients that are saying, you know what, I found this other data set and I want to be able to integrate that into my decision-making process. And they can't just do it once off because the data is changing so frequently. So we're including new data sources into our analysis and helping drive decisions through that. We've got a lot of our clients that are having to do more with less, right? So, you know, if they're on a spending freeze and somebody leaves, then they can't necessarily go out and hire somebody. So we're seeing some of our clients that have really leaned on us for more help while they're trying to get through this uncertainty. I'm seeing a much bigger push to the cloud, right? So we're working with a lot of clients that have Click, with clients that have Snowflake, and a lot of them are pushing more stuff from, you know, I've got the server under my desk or in my data center, you know, downstairs, and they're aggressively going to the cloud because they don't have the resources internally to maintain a whole ton of servers, and they need that reliability and scalability that the cloud provides. So we're seeing a lot of that. And then I guess the last thing that I can think of right now, probably think of 20 more things as soon as I pause. But the whole aspect of machine learning and forecasting, you know, people say, how can you forecast or how can you do machine learning in unpredictable times like this? And really the answer is you have to continue training these machine learning models more and more frequently. You get more data sets, you iterate through them, you try to find the trend in all of this new data that you're getting. And so we're seeing a lot of our clients that are saying, you know what, we need to do more with this. We need to do more forecasting. And I guess I did think of one other thing, you know, obviously everybody, you know, you're working from home, I'm working from home. You know, just the whole concept of being online in the office versus being online at home is dramatically different. So the tools are getting better for doing things like video conferencing and this kind of thing. But as we're looking at things like business intelligence platforms, you know, a lot of people were used to, I need to download a whole bunch of data to my desktop and build something. And then I take that something that I built and I push it up to a server. That's just not really a realistic expectation when people are working from home and they have to work on their laptop, which for some clients, that laptop may be, you know, a pretty old system and it's not really up to the task of big data sets. So we're seeing a lot of push towards the more modern platforms like Click, where you can do all of the development using the server resources. It's just like browsing a web page, except the web server per se is actually in your data center or in the cloud and able to connect to all of the data sources that you need. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's become a lot more important since everyone is on their tiny little laptops for the most part, and they don't have their systems. We've got a question here for you from Ikechi. What motivated you to switch to data analytics, and what advice would you give to somebody wanting to switch?
What motivated me was kind of a function of, I did CRM implementations for about 10 years before I got into data and analytics. Okay. And so we built these systems that captured all kinds of data. Mm-hmm. But just because you have the data doesn't mean that it's in a form that you can take action on. And so when I had done a big, huge Siebel implementation, and Siebel bought a company called Enquire, turned it into Siebel Analytics. Now you would know it as Oracle Business Intelligence, or OB. Mm-hmm. So it was more a function of, hey, we've got this data and we want to make better decisions off of it. And the client said, we really need to do this. And so we helped them, make that journey. As far as what I would suggest for, how do I get into that space? What should I do? I think for me, I've been in consulting basically my entire career. And I think what makes people successful at that, and what makes people successful at BI and analytics, twofold. First of all, you have to have a thirst for knowledge. You got to want to read a whole lot, read a lot of news, read a lot of articles about different industries. It doesn't have to be a technical article about how to do, how to build a dimensional data warehouse. Like, that stuff is interesting and it's good. But the value that we can provide by doing data and analytics is more in what decisions can we drive through that. So if I don't understand the business, I'm not going to know what questions to ask. I'm not going to be able to drill into the details of when somebody says, I want a pie chart in the upper left-hand corner of this dashboard. I don't know. I want to be able to understand why they think they might need that and what decision they're going to drive from that. So know the industry and learn the technology, I think, would be my takeaways from that.
Absolutely. That's great advice. Thank you, John. I think at this point, I'm actually going to bring Scott Pavel into our show. And just a warning, people who are watching, you might get hungry because we are going to talk about chicken. Hi, Hi, Scott. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right. I think it'd be good to get started with, tell people a little bit about yourself and about Smart Chicken.
Smart Chicken, we're a 20-year-old company that started from scratch, and so we are a niche company. We were the first air chill company in the United States and the first air chilled organic company in the United States. So we do a lot of different things. Air chill is a challenge. Growing organic is a challenge, but we've done that and grew the company. And we were bought by Tyson a couple of years ago, but we are a subsidiary organization. We run independently of them, and because keep our identity and keep the program going. So it's been a good ride and interesting to start a company from scratch and see where it goes. So never thought I'd be a chicken farmer, but that's what I ended up doing. So.
All right, and the name Smart Chicken, is that of any significance? Is that related to data, or is it just a smarter way?
No, the original founder of the company had his children initials were MBA, and so and he came up with the Smart Chicken because of that factor. So that's how it was named. So,
okay, that's very interesting, actually.
Yeah. So that's the uniqueness of it. So.
Okay, all right, interesting. So John, do you want to talk a bit about how you've started working with Smart Chicken from Pomeroy Partners? Tell that story.
Sure. So I guess some years ago when I joined Pomeroy, so I'd been working for previous consulting companies. I joined Pomeroy in 2017 as the U.S. managing partner. So I'm leading the U.S. operations. We actually did a marketing event. Marketing/education event in Omaha, and Smart Chicken is 50 miles away from Omaha.
50, yep. Or just outside Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yeah. And so Scott attended that. We struck up a conversation and talked about some of the things that they were doing with Click. And that really led to us just continuing to help them out and got engaged through the Click side. And then over the years, we've been working with them. Really, about 2 years ago, we started on the machine learning, auto ML front, and integrating Data Robot into their Click platform.
Okay, interesting. So I'd love to hear maybe from both of you, why you made that decision to go with Click and Data Robot, because we actually do have a question here also from Supriya asking, what are your thoughts on ThoughtSpot as compared to other analytics platforms? Because I guess her clients are thinking of investing in it. So we'd love to hear your logic and reasoning behind going with those companies.
Well, for us, we picked Click because as a smaller organization, it's easier for us to use on our business analysts can do a lot of the dashboard work, and you're not development heavy. So that's why we went through that process. Data Robot was something that John and his team brought forward because we forecast. We come up with our own algorithm, but there's some inaccuracies in it. And so how do Data Robot was brought forward to us so we can break things down and we can work on different levels of forecasting that we couldn't do before because it was so much work to do it on your own. And so that's where we had a need, and John talked to us about Data Robot, and that's how we got started on it. And when we got started on it 2 years ago, there wasn't really a lot out there to do that kind of thing. And they were one of the first to market and have been really good to work with. So
okay, thank you for that. Yep, I'm just looking. We have some questions here coming in. Question for John from Dinesh. John, did you face a situation that made you think such a decision can be made without analytics involved? Rather, involving data analytics eats a lot of time and energy.
Well, I think it kind of depends on what you mean by analytics, right?
Yeah.
If you're talking about hardcore machine learning algorithms and things like that, there's a lot that goes into those projects. There's a lot of data prep that goes in. You have to make sure that the data is structured the right way. You have to make sure that it's clean, all of that stuff. I see a lot of companies that want to leapfrog from we've got everything in spreadsheets to we want this big, huge machine learning platform and we want to do all of our forecasting that way. Thankfully, with Smart Chicken, they had a lot of the fundamentals in place. They had a really strong platform. They were doing tons and tons of analysis with that data. And I think that took them a long way. They were able to identify trends just through a lot of charts and graphs and KPI objects. So you don't necessarily have to have that level of platform to really get a lot of value out of it. The machine learning and the true analytics behind it was really just the next step in the evolution.
Okay, thank you. And actually, Mahesh is asking a question that I was just going to ask both of you anyways, but it's basically around the COVID and how that's impacted your business. So his question is, did you try forecasting the current Corona situation and were you successful or not?
Yes and no. Because Corona is a crazy time to forecast. So around here, the demand for protein, everybody knows, you got surge buying in March, and then it's kind of slowly settled in. So we worked with Pomerol and Data Robot to come up with the COVID forecast. And basically we're trying to figure out, and we continue to do our regular forecast, and then we mark events and say, okay, this is an event that occurred. How's that reacting to our regular forecast? And then we're seeing as they meet over time where that forecast is kind of playing out. And our assumption that we would see an overall 10 to 15% increase in demand for us down the line looks like that's the direction it's heading. And because the consumer habits have changed, and so when you started to forecast COVID, you have no idea where things are going to play out but it seems like the three different forecasts that we kind of look at are kind of starting to merge together.
Okay.
So give us 2 more months. I think we're going to say it was really successful.
Yeah.
But there's so many unknowns because you just thrown information in there to see what you get. Because there's a lot of crazy stuff that we didn't know about, but it seems like it's heading the direction that we thought it would, and the systems are forecasting it out that way.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You know, one of the the early cases that we talked about with Smart Chicken, you know, they have a lot of different products, right? So you can have chicken wings and breasts and boneless, skinless breasts and split breasts and.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks. I haven't had lunch yet. Thank you. Keep going. Yes.
You can get French fries. Sorry, actually, they don't do that. But they would see this huge spike in demand around the Super Bowl for wings, right? Okay. Everybody's having parties, so there's a lot more demand for wings. And so that was one of those things that they needed to put into a model. So what Scott was talking about with trying to forecast in the current situation is now we need to add in things like on a state by state basis when these states are opening up restaurants and at what capacity, and when they're, you know, when all of these different things are happening, and trying to blend that data together so that we can feed it into a machine learning model and try to get more accurate. So it's this constant iteration, and you're constantly thinking about it and thinking, okay, what else can I do to, what other things might impact what demand is? Because if more people go out to restaurants, then they're probably not cooking at home as much. So they might not be buying as much chicken. There was the kind of the panic buying almost that really happened in March. So just being able to constantly iterate through all of these different data points as they become available is becoming more and more important to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's difficult to anticipate what's going to happen in any industry, but besides the kind of unique challenges you mentioned already, are there other specific challenges that you've had to deal with in addressing the COVID situation, specifically with how you used, if there's a scenario where you use data to try and address that uncertainty?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that we can do with. I'm sorry if I cut you off there, Scott.
No,
but there's a lot that we can do with, when we're forecasting demand, how does that impact our labor forecast, and taking that to the next level. And then we've got some clients where they've had plants that have had to shut down because of people getting sick in the plant. So what does that do to their supply forecast? So leveraging all of that, I think, is important when you're trying to make those decisions in these, the uncertain times that we have. And then again, just doing more with less people. How do we focus down to what is really critical to our business? Because, unfortunately, people have gotten laid off and or furloughed. The business still has to try to run. But we're trying to help people focus down from, I need my social media dashboard. That's probably not as critical path as something like I need to make sure that I have product that I can ship. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott, did you want to add to that before I go to the next question?
No, he covered it. So there's just like any other company challenge, though. It's labor and we work with a live bird. So if your labor's short, and we're predicting we're forecasting bird weights and bird livability. So you got to match all that up. There's a challenge when you're dealing with less. So how do you forecast that out and what we can perform? And those are some of the challenges that have occurred. Luckily, we've kind of gotten through that phase we're in pretty good shape. But that was a definite challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you both mentioned kind of trying to do more with less, and I think I can't think of any industries that's not having to deal with this challenge. But do you think this is going to be a permanent thing where once you've mastered how to do more with less, that you're not going to hire more people? Or do you think this is just a temporary phase that you're going through, and then things will go back to normal or somewhat normal?
For us, it's a great educational process because you have to build models on the fly, and really dig into analysis. Some of the thing we've done with Click and Data Robot, you put all together, and then you say, I got this many people, and you're forecasting what I can do, and it actually tells you when you're stressed, what your stress point is, and because we never really get to that point. Actually, you think you do. Now we really understand the stress points, and that's helped a lot.
Okay, thanks. And the other question I had on here was in terms of forecasting. So there are some people who are predicting a phase 2, right? So just wanted to get your thoughts on what are you taking any precautions, or what steps are you taking in case there is a phase 2?
Well, everything's in place. So if there's a phase 2, so I think the industry and overall, I think it's gonna be continuous. I don't think you're gonna see this phase 2 spike in these facilities anymore. So I don't think the consumer buying habits are gonna change that much based on what our forecast is saying through Data Robot and how people are buying. And you can see that trend where it's kind of settling. So I think that people are used to having the virus, and they're adapting to that virus. And so you kind of have a new norm, and how long that new norm lasts to get back to the old norm, who knows? That's why we have Data Robot and Click and all that kind of stuff to try to figure that out.
And is it typical for chicken producers to use data analytics in their company, or are you guys just the smartest chicken out there?
Forecasting sales and process like we do to the actual unit, to the actual customer, no. We're probably one of the first ones to do it. And part of that is some of these were at 20 years old. We didn't have systems in place, and all these old systems in place that make it tough to forecast. So we were able to take that data, and with Click's help and Data Robot's help, and kind of manage that process, because we didn't have bad data or dirty data. It was pretty clean. So we're able to get to these points, and it wasn't easy. It hasn't been easy, but once you get there, it's been very productive for us. So we're probably pretty unique in how we forecast. I know we're pretty unique in how we forecast across the industry, and it's just tough for other people to do because it just takes time. You got to have the patience to get there.
Yeah, I think it's an inspiring story, especially when you take into consideration that there are so many tech companies that I would say are still not utilizing analytics to as much as they can be utilizing them. Did you have any issues in terms of data literacy and trying to make sure that everyone, or the people who use that data, are data literate and understand how all that works, like Click and Data Robot?
It's just like any company, no matter what size, you got to get wins. So you got to pick the wins off where you can get a victory, and then over time, now we don't have an issue. Just like everybody else, there's issues. People don't think that you're trying to sabotage their job because you got this new data. So there's issues like that. But if we fortunately over time, people accepted it and knew the information was accurate, and so we don't have that problem anymore. It took using a good BI dashboard, and then you're showing accuracy and how you're forecasting what you're doing. And it took time to get those wins, but once you get there, the company runs really well, and we continue to have good financial numbers, better and better all the time, because we live by it. It's helped us a lot.
Does that mean your budget's going up next year, Scott?
Yeah. We're still in a COVID environment, so you got
right.
There's some unknowns out there that we still don't know.
Yeah. I think that's I've had a lot of discussions with a lot of people about the new normal and what's that going to look like, and what's it going to mean in commercial real estate, and what's it going to mean for big cities, and where people have to take public transit, or they're going into a building where there's thousands of people. Like, are we going to all be stuck working from home a lot more? And I think humans, generally speaking, we're social creatures, right? most people tend to like to spend time in the presence of other people. Although sometimes it's nice to not be. But I think people are going to get back to offices, and they're going to want to get back to offices. And I think that I don't want to turn it into a political discussion, but there's more and more information coming out all the time about what this COVID thing actually is and what it's like, and whether it's mutating, and if it's still as dangerous as it was because of social distancing and slowing it down. And so I think that there will be some changes. I think office plans might turn into less cube farms and open offices and more into, I have my own office, but I also have meeting rooms where I can, grab somebody and say, hey, let's go jump in a room. Because that's what I miss the most. I miss being able to just walk over to somebody's desk and say, hey, I'm working on this problem. I could really use a little bit of another person to talk to. No matter how good the technology gets, I'm a person who thinks better when I'm walking around. So half the time I'm on a Zoom call, if I have my camera on, you just see my empty chair because I'm standing.
John, we appreciate you not getting up right now.
My palms are getting kind of sweaty from just sitting here and not.
Here's the right time.
Yeah.
How's your back?
Yeah, it's killing me.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to get back to a lot more people working in offices again. And I think people's memories tend to be fairly short about these things. It's not going to be normal for a long time, but we'll eventually get back there. Well, we've been through worse in the history of the U.S., so we've always seemed to recover and do well. So,
very positive speech. Thank you, John. I hope you're right. We got a question here from Mohammed. So he's asking, in your opinion, how will IoT and edge analytics reshape supply chain uncertainty and analytics?
I mean, for me, when we're talking to clients, a lot of what we're spending our time doing is trying to help them create an analytics strategy. So I think sometimes people start putting things in place and they say, I really have to have this dashboard or that dashboard or this data source or that shiny new tool. And they don't think about what the business challenge is behind it. So they don't know what their objective is. And because they don't know what their objective is, they don't know what it is that they need to measure to impact that or achieve that objective. So I think that there's a lot of great technology, but I would make sure that when we're talking about things like IoT and edge devices and stuff like that we really understand what it is that we're trying to get to. Like if we work with an IoT company that's got sensors on a whole bunch of tanks all over the US, actually all over the world, what is it that we're trying to do? Well, we're trying to really optimize workforce and optimize and keep people from running out of supplies for their production. So, but if we don't understand what exactly our objective is with that IoT device, then there's a big danger in implementing technology that doesn't get adopted and therefore ends up being a waste of money.
You get a lot. We're into the IoT and edge devices, and you get a lot of want to people. That'd be cool to have, as John said. But we gotta focus because you can waste a lot of time. But in saying that, if you do it right, there's a huge advantage you're going to gain. Understanding how things work. That you made assumptions that you assumed things were working in a certain way, and then you start collecting information and managing systems according to what that's saying, and it's a totally different ballgame.
Yeah, well, it's also goes down to the 110-100 rule, right? If you catch something in the design process or before the project is really full steam, it costs 1x. If you catch something when you're in testing, it's 10x, and if you catch something when it's in production, it's 100x the cost. So we're always urging people, like, let's talk about it a lot more on the front end when it's cheap to make a decision or to make a change, and catch it before we get into production with something that really is not not helping you meet your business objectives.
Yeah, absolutely. I think user adoption is just key. It's easy to get excited by every shiny new object that comes out.
Yeah.
But as long as you keep the focus on the business, the end user, and the end goal, and keeping that communication open the entire time. We've got a question here that's HR related, and I just clicked on, okay, here it is. So, interesting question. So the question is, have you done a project for HR functions to give insights on their workforce? The challenge I have is mainly on data quality and the business's trust in HR functions when it comes to data and using it to draw insights to make decisions.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we do have some clients where we're doing some HR, particularly around benefits and wellness management, and integrating. Just go look at the deductions that come out of your paycheck, and it's, one company does your medical, another one does your dental, another one might do your vision, somebody else is doing your short and long-term disability, and so there's all this stuff, and they're all in different platforms, and you're trying to manage all of that and merge it together. So there's a ton of data quality issues there, but more generally from an HR perspective, I think that there's not necessarily a huge amount of data that a lot of people have. Like people are doing reviews and stuff like that, and they tend to be fairly subjective. There's not a lot of data that you can use to capture whether somebody is a good employee or a bad employee, unless you capture like every single task that a person works on.
Yeah.
And I mean, you'd spend so much time managing that process that you wouldn't have any time to actually mentor or coach the person to figure out. So I think HR is challenging most from an analytics perspective, primarily because of the lack of ones and zeros that you can add, subtract, delete, and make a decision off of that.
Yeah, I've seen some companies actually try to improve on that. It's still very subjective, but I've seen scatter plots of performance. But then again, one person's scatter plot that shows you in the middle is different than the other person who's put that their employee's performance in the middle, because they have a different mindset, right? They think, some people should belong to the top if they're perfect. Some people put you at the top if you've just done okay. And it's also, again, very subjective.
Yeah, and I think also a lot of times there's a tendency to overcomplicate things. So sometimes the right answer is not necessarily let's go buy the behemoth HR system that's going to measure things on 42 different data points. Let's just go do like a net promoter score kind of evaluation of our employees, and get 20 people to say, do I give Kate a frowny face or a smiley face or the yellow no expression face?
The neutral one, yeah.
Yeah, and use that rather than the big huge thing. That's a lot more approachable, and you can still get some pretty good data from it that you can do some analysis on.
Yeah. So I know you, Scott and John, you shared the journey that Smart Chicken went on. Are there any lessons learned that you can share with other companies or individuals at companies that would like to go on a similar journey on improving their data and analytics processes?
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And you're going to get stuff wrong. So, but don't be afraid. Because once you get going and the momentum gets going, it's a great run. If you get people that really want to learn, they really want to learn and understand what's going on. And that's a big key. But I won't be afraid of it, but understand that there'll be some ups and downs that go with it. But it's worth the run.
Yeah,
So.
I think for us, or my recommendation, shameless plug, we have a methodology we call Analytics to Win, which will help an organization get to a data strategy and a roadmap. And there's the old saying that if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. but I think you can burn a lot of money by not having a roadmap in place and identifying what are my business objectives and how am I going to support that through analytics or measure that my attainment through analytics. So I would say design first and then start building and then go worry about what the technology is, rather than starting with the technology and saying, what can we do with this now that we bought it?
Yeah.
It's your business unit kind of analysis of what kind of problem do I have to solve.
Yeah.
And then what tools do I have currently that get me there, and where do I need to go from there? So,
yeah, a question on that. So how important do you think it is or was for you guys to have a leader or a few leaders that are on board with the mission to help drive this, like that key stakeholder? Was that a make or break for making progress, or do you think it could be done without having that cheerleader in the organization?
It's a challenge if you don't. Put it that way. So if you don't have that leader, it's gonna be a challenge. But as I said, if you can pick a win, then you can chip away. And that's where with John, with their strategy of what's your data plan, your data is going to help out, because you got to pick those wins, and you got to get the easy win up front, and then after that you can go from there. So
yeah, I think too, having that leader is so important. I mean, back in my CRM consulting days, I did a huge CRM implementation and found out, 3 months after it went live, that one of the managers was requiring his entire sales team to put together their weekly report in Excel. And it crushed the user adoption, because they were like, why should I put anything into CRM? Because I just have to go fill out this Excel report anyway. So if people aren't on the same page with how the data is being measured and communicated and analyzed, then they're going to go off and do their own thing. So if you have a leader that says, like, this is my single source of truth, this is what I'm measuring you on, then people are going to get on board, because they want to know what they're being measured on. They want to see it before they get called into the office to answer for it.
And our story is we struggled as a startup company. So you go through that process. It's kind of like you better adopt using some of the data more, or you're going to die as a company. And that was kind of you were force fed into that scenario. We got to change. So and as you go through that process, you learn a lot about what's important. You got to look at one piece at a time to get to that end point that you're hoping to reach.
Yeah, absolutely. You got a comment here from Bruno saying, Scott, I agree, the data pipeline must be well designed.
Definitely.
Yes. I think all those things have to come together. And I was actually curious. So you mentioned that you didn't have a data quality issue, or not much of a data quality issue. And I think that's a problem for almost any other company I talked to. Was there something you did early on to avoid poor data quality in your systems, or tell us the secret, Scott?
Well, some of it's lucky, and so we have data quality issues because as a company you develop some apps and all that kind of stuff. But fortunately, with Click and a few other things that we did on our own, we were smart enough to say, okay, we can't have these one-offs, and we did. Either we're smart or lucky, a little bit of both. And then with some of the resources you get through ClickSense in to pull that data, multiple data sets together, it helps you, and that helps us actually with the data robot process, because we can use some of those platforms through ClickSense that Pomerle's helped us with to get information into data robot for our forecasting methodology. So was the data 100% clean? Just everything's lined up perfectly? No, but most of the data sets were within, and we followed, I guess your naming protocols and all that kind of stuff. So there was some linkage, and that was I said either lucky or smart or a combination of both. So that helps you out a lot. So you're able to link the databases together because the naming processes and stuff are at least for the most part similar.
Okay, thank you. We actually got a question for you here from Fred, asking, when you selected people for your data team, did you capture any qualifying data points outside of a thirst for knowledge? Like, not sure if you heard me or not. Should I start over?
I did.
Oh,
Just
okay,
one
yeah.
dropped out. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So he asked if you captured any qualifying data points outside of a thirst for knowledge, like a personality index to select the people who share certain traits. So this is for your data team.
Well, my data team is you live and learn. You got to have my aspect is they got to be able to talk business and they got to want to learn. If they can't hold a conversation about what the business is or what you're trying to achieve, you're not going to succeed. In any data strategy that we have, we got to have people that just want to go get answers. Because once you get to a certain point, and we're not a huge company, but you can't have one person drive the entity. You gotta get back together and understand where you're going, but you can't have one person drive the entity of what we're trying to learn, what we're trying to get. So you gotta have learners. I'm 54, and every day I know less and less because there's so much information out there. So if you don't want to learn, you're gonna be in trouble.
Yeah.
It's a learner. You got to have a learner.
Yeah, especially now when everything's changing every day.
Yeah.
System new. Yeah.
I don't need a 4.0 student. I need a 3.5 that wants to learn.
Yeah. How about a 2.5? I mean, I'm sure they're planning on building.
I can relate to that early in my college days. So yeah.
Yeah. You know.
Oh, you're in Japan.
Yeah. I did the world a favor and didn't actually pursue mechanical engineering as a career, even though that was my degree in undergrad. So.
Yeah.
We got a question here from Kurt. Given these uncertain times, the looming pandemic brought us a shortage of toilet paper and essential items. How could proper data analysis have predicted exactly where these shortages would have occurred? And more importantly, given the volume of data, how can we ensure that the data is clean enough, going back to data quality, to make such an accurate prediction?
Here's my opinion. I don't think you can lose the you can't lose the idea of what the normal usage is. Because otherwise, as a company, if you try to predict all that surge, now we have information that you could predict some of that surge and understand some of the processes of another pandemic hits. But if you lose the thought that, okay, here's where I was at, what can I do from a facility standpoint? You're gonna get your company in trouble because you're gonna see these up and down surges and all that kind of stuff. And you saw that companies with producing toilet paper and all that kind of stuff. You're starting to see all this huge supply now again. You walk in a Costco or a store, it's like toilet paper's everywhere. So for us, we understand that because the demand for us is still above what we can supply. So you can't lose what your identity is as far as what you can do, can't do, and then you can make exceptions. Get to certain points, but you can't. You got to lean on the forecast of what you know, and then what we did is just build a COVID forecast and say where's the in between, because otherwise you're gonna be scrambling. I think if you try to forecast that to the exact T.
Yeah, I think toilet paper shortages in particular. There's actually been a lot of articles that I've read about that, and there's different suppliers that are supplying the home use toilet paper versus all of the commercial stuff, and people spend a lot of their day in the office, and now they're not at the office, so they're at home, so they've got to buy stuff for home. So you've got different vendors and a completely different supply chain that it's going through. So could we have predicted it? we probably could have predicted it, whether there was any way for them to actually respond to it and prepare for it. Like, I don't know if their facilities, I shop at Costco. I don't know if Costco's production facilities for toilet paper are big enough to handle the fact that everybody is at home now and they're not going to the bathroom at the office. But in a typical machine learning kind of scenario, you would say somebody's got to have the foresight to say, hey, we make toilet paper and all of a sudden all these people are going to be at home. We need to quantify that, and maybe we do it by zip code or by MSA or something like that. And we could predict that because there's a huge number of people working in offices in New York City or Chicago or pick another big town, that all these people are going to end up back at home somewhere. We need to do that. It's also I'm sorry.
So do you have right now you have the data sets to understand that?
Yeah.
Nobody's been through it before, so that's kind of hard to understand.
Yeah.
I think there's also a psychological factor. Staying on that toilet paper discussion for a minute. No, I just read some articles that it wasn't even an actual demand or need. It was just an attempt to control something that you can control versus the uncertainty of COVID that you can't control.
Yeah.
We had the same issue when there's media coverage about all the plants running. You're going to have a supply shortage and all that kind of stuff. All of a sudden, we saw a second spike in surge buying, and that lasted about a week or about 10 days, and then that occurred down. And that was more just like somebody says, "Okay, we got this. We're not gonna have enough product." Well, if you bought what you normally would have bought or COVID normally bought, would have been fine. Then all of a sudden, you see these shortages because people start loading up, and that occurred just like the toilet paper issue.
Yeah, I think with hand soap is more interesting to me, because I think that there are a lot more people that are washing their hands a lot more. I don't care whether it's at home or at the office. And so, even months into this process, like our regular big, huge jugs of refill soft soap for all of our soap dispensers at home, every time we go to Costco, it's out of stock. So we're buying different formats of soap, but I think that is just going to generally raise that bar for forever. Or, as I said, people have short memory, so it'll raise it for a while, and then people will get lax about it, and that might drop down a little bit. But
I think your companies, though, organizations are like the hand sanitizer. They had that around, but it's gonna stay.
Yeah.
Some of like your thermal scanning and all that kind of stuff, temperatures. That'll be interesting. That'll be an interesting data set, because we're doing thermal scanning as people walk in. Interesting data sets where we keep that data, and then you can track seasonality of illnesses and by temperatures over the next year. And we've been doing that since late March. So if you understand those data sets, you can actually understand your workforce and the illnesses. So it'll be interesting to watch, because you'll be able to see temp monitoring systems now and say, okay, how's that affecting my workforce? And when you see these spikes in illnesses and all that kind of stuff, it'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now afterwards, are you going to be able to convince people to stay at home if they're sick?
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah, you might be able to predict a little bit with more accuracy as well in the year or two, right? When you can expect people to get sick. So you guys have shared a very interesting story. I know we're getting close to our time here, another 5 minutes or so, but wanted to ask, what is next, right? You've done a lot. You're in a great place with your data analytics, and you're thinking ahead in terms of the trends. So what are you going to do next, if you can tell us?
Next for us, well, naturally we have an opportunity to grow, but the next stage for us is we're forecasting our demand. We're getting into forecasting our performance of equipment. We're forecasting our bird numbers. How do you bring all that forecasting pieces together into kind of one master forecast model that says here's what I need, this bird at this location will take this long to grow, and how do I maximize my profits if I get the best number of pieces in a tray and equate that to sales. So how do you start bringing these independent models that have really helped us a lot into this one master model, and really drive profitability, and you get 4 or 5 more points of margin built into your process. So how do you take those models and just make them work together? Because we got a lot of good information forecasted, and we can take that stuff, and now how can you really run with it? And that's where good business intelligence processes come in play, and we're still learning that part.
All right.
As far as we're concerned, what's next for us? Just the continued movement to the cloud. So with Click and some of their new offerings, we do a lot of hosting for a lot of our clients. So we're taking on a lot more managed services kind of approach, rather than it being project driven. We're trying to offer the long-term management of the entire platform, as well as doing enhancements to their decision-making process. We're partnering with Snowflake for that cloud-based data warehouse. And I think the other big thing is, people are starting to look, the old school way of doing things was ETL. You extract data, you transform it, and you load it. And then they'd have these big, long processes that were chained together, and it would take days to get stuff. And if something breaks, then your reports aren't ready for 6 hours after they're supposed to be. So we're moving more towards the ELT. We're gonna use something to replicate the data really, really quickly. Every time a transaction hits, it's in your warehouse, and then do the processing. So those are some of the things that we're working on, is moving in that direction.
Okay, and John, just a quick question on the cloud. I know you work with a lot of different companies. Do you still see that there's a need for people to keep things on premises, or a preference to keep things on premises because they simply don't trust the cloud, or security reasons?
Yeah, I mean, I think some industries are very hesitant, reluctant, can't. There's a lot of concern anytime we're in healthcare or medical devices or anything like that with HIPAA compliant information. Financial services also tends to be very, very rigid about that. The bigger the organization, the more hesitant they are going to be to take all of their really important, a lot of different things. Like the private cloud, pretty much everybody has at least a couple of VMs that are sitting on AWS or Azure or GCP. When you're talking public cloud, though, then there's some hesitation. But it's more of a hurdle than a wall. It's something you got to get over or around, but it's not something that's really going to stop anybody for forever from doing that.
Absolutely. Got it. Thank you for sharing that. So I think at this point, I'd like to wrap up the discussion. But before we go, I'd just like to ask both of you to just let people know where can they go to learn more about the work you're doing. And if they want to continue the discussion, we do have more questions that are actually coming in. But where can they go to continue the discussion? Are you on LinkedIn, Twitter? Do you want people to email you directly? Maybe start with Scott.
Best probably LinkedIn for me, and be patient. But I want to have the response. But yeah, LinkedIn's the best way to get a hold of me. So
LinkedIn is a good way. My alter ego on Twitter is BizIntelli, BIZINTELLI. Or if you just feel like emailing me, my email address is easy. It's fitz@palmerallpartners.com. Always happy to chat.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you both so much for the great discussion. It was really interesting to learn about the journey that you guys, both took together to get analytics into a chicken producing company. And I am very hungry now. So thank you. Off to lunch. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Kate.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, Scott.